The Chicago Bears left tackle battle is heating up at training camp, but to be honest, I'm a little bit weary about the approach they're taking.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. On the show today, I want to check in on this Bears left tackle battle, where we're getting some early results on who might be ahead and what direction this battle is going, even as we'll hear Ben Johnson describe it as, hey, it's a blank slate and everybody's starting off on equal standings here. But he also discusses some of the challenges that come with not just a head-to-head two-person position battle, but trying to get three guys into the mix here. I'm just not sure it's the best approach, and I'll explain some of my concerns about how the Bears are handling it, including trying to figure out the timeline of where this actually all gets set in stone in time for this offensive line to build up their chemistry and cohesion for the regular season. But the opening of training camp gave us an opportunity to see who's getting the first reps, who's starting out with the starters at practice. And it's tricky because Braxton Jones is still ramping up from injury, but to me, he still emerges currently as not only the incumbent favorite, but also the guy who I see as in first place in this battle. Then Ozzy Trapillo is clearly second, and Karana Magaji then is clearly third. None of that is set in stone or for sure how this is going to play out, but the updates we get from the first Bears training camp practice laid it out as such. So the way this worked is that when the team was doing walkthroughs, warm-ups, non-contact type of stuff. I mean, I guess without pads on, it's not really full contact anyway, but, like non-team drills, the low-intensity drills. Braxton Jones got the first opportunities. He was out with the starters at left tackle. Then when they got into team drills and, you had the full 5 offensive line group out there together and working, 11 on 11 and stuff, then Ozzy Trapillo was with the first team there, in part because Braxton Jones isn't full go yet. He is still ramping up. He missed all of the off-season workouts and activities up to this point in recovery from the surgery he had for the injury he suffered at the end of last season. So Braxton Jones can't currently do everything at practice. And so for the stuff he couldn't do, that's when Ozzy Trapillo got the first crack at it. And so that's where I see Braxton Jones is still in first place, still in the lead. He should be the favorite coming into this as the only one of this group with real NFL experience at the left tackle position. But he's not able to do everything, so we get a clear view of who's in second place with Ozzy Trapillo getting those reps. And then clearly Karana Magaji in third here. Now that doesn't mean that as the week goes on, that that Amagaji might not get more of those first team reps, or Trapillo might get more opportunities where Jones has been, right? It's not as though this order is what they're permanently going to be every single week or every single practice, every single day. But the fact that this is how they start, it's a very clear snapshot of this is where they currently stand. Now, Ben Johnson was careful to try and downplay the idea that just because Braxton Jones is the incumbent doesn't necessarily mean he gets a head start, because he still insists that where they're starting right now is a blank slate. Here's how he answered a question to start training camp.
I know that Ryan said that Braxton's going to start, he'll be on a ramp-up period to get up to speed, but when you look at the benchmarks you're going to set to evaluate that left tackle position, does he naturally have a leg up just because he's been the starter for 3 years, or do you view all three of them as level playing field?
Yeah, I would like to think his experience will help him, but we're coming in with blank slates right now. So they're just because a guy's played and another guy hasn't in this league, we're going to let the competition play out, and we'll see where it goes.
I'm glad Ben Johnson at least acknowledged that, hey, like, yes, the experience should be an advantage for Braxton Jones. But even beyond that, like, I don't take his blank slate comments at face value here. Like, as though they have no preconceived opinions on the quality of these three players. Like, Ben Johnson and the offensive line coach Dan Rashar, like, all the coaches watched what Braxton Jones did last season. All the coaches watched what Karan Amagaji did last season. All the coaches watched what Ozzie Trapillo did in college. Like, they enter this left tackle battle knowing a certain amount about the quality of all three of those guys. Like clearly they will have some inkling of like how good they all are. And it's a blank slate in terms of like each player will get an opportunity to change the coach's mind and move up or down based on their previous evaluations and sort of preconceived notions about them. But it's not as though they walk into training camp and the coaching staff goes, hey, we have no idea which of these left tackles is any good or not. Like it's not truly a blank slate in that regard. I understand why Ben Johnson is not going to come out and say that, because of course you do want all three players to believe that they have an equal chance to win and an equal chance to lose. You don't want Braxton Jones to assume that, well, I've been the starter here, so I don't have to work that hard because they're going to let me win, right? You want him to feel pushed. And you also don't want Karan Amagashi to assume, oh, I'm not as good as those guys, I have no shot to win this. Like, you want all three players to genuinely believe, I can win this job, and genuinely believe I can lose this job. So you're not going to publicly say, yeah, Braxton's probably going to win this, but we'll see what happens. Like, you want to leave the door open there. But along the way, I don't necessarily take everything he said there with 100% clarity or 100%. Not that he's lying, right? It's not dishonest, but it's just necessary use of language to push these players as best as you possibly can. But I don't want us on the outside to think, oh wow, these three players are equal, and the Bears are trying to figure out who's really the best one of this group, because I think they've got a pretty good idea of what direction they expect this will likely go. And then it's a matter of watching practices and seeing how quickly Braxton Jones gets up to speed, because that's the other real factor here is like, if Braxton Jones has lingering injury issues or effects, like that absolutely could have a real factor in this battle. But if all three of these players had been 100% healthy the entirety of the offseason, we know Braxton Jones is going to be the starting left tackle. Like, it would be a real surprise for Ozzie Trapillo to come in as a rookie second-round pick and unseat Braxton Jones. And it would be a major surprise if Karan Amagashi came in and unseated as a starter. And it doesn't mean that whoever loses this are bad players who are never going to amount to anything good. It just means like, yeah, a fourth-year starting left tackle should be better than rookie backups. And yet I'm still a little bit concerned that they continue to, not in the way Ben Johnson talks about it, but in how they're approaching, like, genuinely making this a 3-player competition where everyone gets an equal opportunity. Feels like you end up kind of, in giving everyone an opportunity, maybe you end up kind of holding them back, and maybe as a result hurting the team a little bit in the process. Like that's the kind of the question I have. I'm not saying that's for sure what's going to happen, but that's the question I have about how they're approaching this battle. So we'll hear from Ben Johnson about the challenges of having a 3-man left tackle battle, and whether that's really going to be I want to debate whether that's really the right approach for this Bears offensive line next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back, so fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. And it's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. I do fantasy football through Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your 1 millionth league. To celebrate now 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. That all begins August 4th. So stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. I understand the reasoning behind the Chicago Bears making this a truly open three-man left tackle competition. But I'm not certain it's truly what's in the best interest of the team's overall success this season. I'm not here to say definitively, hot take, Ben Johnson is wrong and I know better than this NFL coaching staff. I never want that to be my position or where I'm coming off from. But I do think it's healthy and valuable for us to challenge some of their ideas and think about whether we think they're doing things in the best way possible. And that's where I come to this idea of truly opening it up for all three left tackles. I understand the mindset, the idea, the logic behind it is like, listen, we want to find the best left tackle for the Chicago Bears. Absolutely. I agree with that as an objective, right? You want to do whatever you can to ensure that the left tackle you're playing this season is the best left tackle. And so their mindset is, we've got these three players that we like, and we want to give each of them a true opportunity to prove to us that whether or not they are or are not the Bears' best starting left tackle option. And that totally makes sense on paper and in a vacuum, right? Like, we understand the logic behind why they are approaching it this way. But it feels to me like in practice, literally in football practice, but also like in practice versus on paper, the metaphor here, right? Like in reality, in real life, it doesn't necessarily work as well that way. That in including all three players in this battle, I don't think you get as good of a representation of any of the three of them. If three people are splitting reps, first team and second team and third team, you're trying to move guys around and see who's the best left tackle. I mean, really, you're learning the most about these guys with whoever's in with the first team, right? Going up against the starting defense, working with the starting offense. Like, those are the most valuable reps. And then, of course, obviously then the second most valuable reps are with the backups. You got to see if they're dominating backups, then that's usually a good sign that they could be better with the starters. Or if they're not dominating backups, right? You can still learn stuff from the players not in with the starting lineup. But each player then ends up getting such limited opportunities to really, truly show what they can do. And so it doesn't feel like, you are getting a real complete evaluation of which of these guys are your best left tackles. You're really just saying who's been better on these very few opportunities that we've gotten a chance to see them, which might get you your best left tackle. But you could also see maybe if you had two guys working on it and each one got more opportunities, you would get a more complete sense of how good each player was. And also each player would have more opportunity to develop and grow and show what they're able to do as they get, so maybe one day they lose against Montez Sweat, but then over time they're able, as they get more opportunities, they can learn what Montez Sweat does or doesn't do, what Dayo Dengbo doesn't do, and show you that improvement over more time with more opportunities, and eventually sort of more quickly become the better left tackle option because of the extra opportunities they got in that position, as opposed to like, all right, you got one day here and then you're not going to get starting reps until 3 days later, and it's harder to string together and sort of build off of your previous practices in some of the same ways. And Ben Johnson even admits, like, hey, this is the first time he's ever done a three-man battle at the left tackle position. And it all just gives me a little bit of pause about, like, is this truly the best opportunity? So I want to hear what Ben Johnson had to say here, and then kind of dive in how I feel like it, not necessarily like how I would tweak it. Again, I'm not trying to say I know better than them, but like how this could be different and perhaps improved or better.
How challenging is it to juggle a three-man competition at left tackle? Like, two seems pretty basic. You split the reps. Braxton needs some time. You give him some time. But is three more challenging if you're
yeah. It's why everything's going to matter. every play matters. It all is going to matter as we go through this thing. And so I can't tell you I've been through a 3-man race before, and so each play is going to be evaluated, and they got to take full advantage of each opportunity that they get.
I totally understand that the Bears want to be fair to Karan Amagaji and give him every opportunity. But like, when you look at this Bears left tackle battle, like, he's clearly got to be the third place guy here, right? Even if it's no insult to him, when you have 3 players, you have a 3rd round pick, a 2nd round pick, and a 4-year NFL starter. Like, just inherently, if you knew nothing else about the players, inherently the 3rd round pick would be in last place there. And then if you add in, it's a 3rd round pick who missed a bunch of time last offseason, so didn't really get much time to develop, and a 3rd round pick who really, really, really struggled when he took the field during the regular season. Like, it's pretty obvious to us on the outside that Karan Amagaji should be, and is in all likelihood, behind the other guys ahead of him. Obviously, it depends on how quickly Ozzie Trapillo adapts, and you could see some room for, if Trapillo is slow to get up to NFL speed and stuff, that maybe there's an opportunity for Amagaji to try and surpass Trapillo. But then, like, once Braxton Jones is healthy, like, you get so much out of having your starting 5 offensive line in place and having the same guy at the left tackle spot working next to Joe Thuney and learning the system and doing all this stuff, that it just doesn't feel to me like you're really benefiting. Like, is it in the best interest of the Chicago Bears to have 3 guys in this competition? It's in the best interest of Amagaji to absolutely give him a shot. And Ozzie Trapillo and Braxton Jones, like, each of those guys absolutely wants a shot, and I understand wanting to give them their shot. But if the goal is to have the best possible left tackle for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears offense this season, then isn't the offense better served by saying, like, hey, let's make this a 2-man competition. Let's split these guys' reps 50-50 and at least feel like we can have more complete evaluations of all 3. Like, can't you be pretty sure that by now the Karan Amagaji isn't going to be better than Trapillo and Braxton Jones? Like, I just feel like it shouldn't take very long to tell, that between OTAs and mandatory minicamp, like, I mean, unless these players are all truly neck and neck, and boy, we can't tell who's better than the other, so we really got to just kind of keep battling them out because they're so tightly contested in this battle that all 3 of these left tackles are equal, and we got to find a way to separate them. Then we can talk about a 3-man left tackle battle. But I think if we were at the point where Braxton Jones, Ozzie Trapillo, and Karan Amagaji were all essentially equal, then I think you have a problem at left tackle. Like, if you're having trouble deciding which of these 3 guys is the best, then I feel like it means none of them are going to be very good, right? It's not like all 3 of these guys this year are walking in playing at a Pro Bowl level. So if the problem is not going to be we have 3 great players, and boy, we can't tell which of these great players is truly the best of the best. It's like maybe you got 3 okay players, you got to figure out which one's actually good, and it comes back to like the old quarterback saying, right, where if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none, and it feels like if you had 3 left tackles, you had none. So you're like better off knowing who your best player is, figuring that out quickly and going for it, as opposed to like stringing all 3 along in this left tackle battle that may end up just kind of holding back whoever the final starter is from actually being their best this season, as they get fewer opportunities than the rest of the offensive line starters. So hopefully Ben Johnson and the coaching staff make a decision quickly, but he wasn't willing to put a timeline on it, and the way he talked about it has me a little bit nervous that they might take their time with this and might take this a little slower than we'd like to see. So we'll give an update on how long this left tackle battle might take and when I would bet they'll have a decision in place next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish that managing your money felt a little easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. I have the Monarch Money app on my phone, and I use it all the time because it's super convenient. It's more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Because I used to have an app for my bank account, my credit card, my retirement account, my other investments, and you got to sign in 4 different times to check on your whole financial picture. But with Monarch Money, you can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, and all of your spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's MONARCH, monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. No matter how the Bears approach the rotation in the left tackle battle, I think, most importantly is, yes, identify the best left tackle, but like secondary to that is do it quickly. The Bears need to make a left tackle decision quickly here so that they can get in place their best offensive line and let that group work together for as long as possible in the lead up to the regular season. Now, maybe that's not what's going to make or break the offensive line, but the goal should always be to have the best possible offense, the best possible offensive line, and definitively the most time they can have working together is going to help them be the best, especially because there's always going to be the risk of injuries. And so while they're all healthy, get them together now, because presumably over the course of training camp, there's going to be a day when Darnell Wright, tweaks an ankle or something and misses a practice or two. There's going to be a day when Drew Dahlman isn't, the same 5 offensive linemen are not going to get through all of training camp perfectly healthy without missing a single practice. So while they are all currently healthy and practicing, you want to maximize as many opportunities as they can have out there together. And that means trying to decide this as quickly as possible. Now, I get that you don't want to rush it. You don't just want to say, we'll just go with Braxton Jones because he's the incumbent and not give Trapillo or Amagashi a chance. I mean, at the same time, I think you should be able to tell quickly which player is better and kind of decide the competition sooner rather than later. But Ben Johnson wasn't ready to put a timeline on it, and he left the door open for this thing to linger longer than I think any of us would want to see.
Is there an ideal point where you'd like to have that left tackle settled down? And if Braxton's ramp up takes a little bit longer than that, does he just come in kind of playing catch up, or does he get a fair shot from an even perspective?
Yeah, everyone's going to have a fair shot at this, and we're going to work him back in, and we'll see where he's at, and as part of the evaluation, is to see how ready he is by week 1. So by week 1, we'll know exactly who our starting 5 are going to be, and if that takes 3 weeks to figure out, great. If that takes 6 weeks to figure out, no problem.
I'm glad he at least was like, it'd be ideal to do it in 3 weeks. Like, he does recognize the value of and acknowledge the value of trying to do it quickly and preferring to do it quickly if you can, but I understand why he will kind of fall back to the idea of we'll take as long as we need to get the best left tackle. Like, I agree with that as a concept also. I just think functionally, the more time you take, perhaps the less good the winner of the battle will end up being, because they'll have the less amount of time to work together with that offensive line. And I feel like we've seen previous Bears regimes struggle with this and run into problems. I mean, the most prominent example is not apples to apples with the current situation, but back in 2015 when Kyle Long moved from right guard to right tackle 1 week before the start of the season, and then they threw Kyle Long out there at right tackle for the first time. I think, was that against the Green Bay Packers in week 1 that season? My timeline on that is a little bit blurry, but it was hey, you'd been playing this one position all of training camp and all the preseason, and now boom, turn around and play week 1. And I just double checked my math there. My memory is better than I'm giving myself credit for. It was week 1, 2015 against the Green Bay Packers, and it was not easy for him. And he had some trouble out there despite being a really good offensive lineman. And of course, the Bears aren't talking about moving anybody's position, but it's just the idea where it's if you're going through training camp with, whatever, Ozzie Trapillo working with the first team players, and then 2 weeks before the start of the season, you flip to Braxton Jones, when all of a sudden, it's not Jones learning a new position or anything, but it is the offensive line having to get used to a different player there, and the tight ends working next to the tackles in the running game, and passing off blocks, and knowing how quickly the guy next to you can move and recover and adapt, and what you got to help him with and what you don't got to help him with. There's a lot of different intricacies of playing offensive line that you can only master with time on task, repetitions, experience working together. It's duration. You can't rush that type of cohesion and that type of physical chemistry there. It's not something you can manufacture quickly. It just takes time. So the earlier you can start, the earlier or the more time you're able to then put in to build that farther along before you actually take the field in week one. And so if I had to look and guess what timeline the Bears actually will decide this on, kind of reading between the lines of stuff Ben Johnson had said, I think 3 weeks, I think a little less than 3 weeks to me feels like the right amount of time here. That, okay, you want to give this and make it a genuine 3-person left tackle battle. All right, we'll concede that. But one of the other things Ben Johnson talked about, and we're going to dive into this deeper probably next week on the podcast here when we talk about like how much the Bears players are going to play during preseason games, how much the starters are going to play. We got the indication from Ben Johnson that, hey, starters probably not going to play a ton in the actual preseason games because he's going to put a lot of stock into the joint practices they're doing with the Buffalo Bills before their second preseason game and the Miami Dolphins before their first preseason game. That those joint practices are probably going to mean more than the preseason games themselves. The first joint practice is against the Miami Dolphins on August 8th. That to me is the timeline I'm identifying for this left tackle battle. Because if first practice was Wednesday, July 23rd, 2 weeks would put us at August 6th, which is 2 days before that Miami Dolphins practice. And I feel like once you get through that joint practice, that practice on a Friday, then they play the preseason game on the 10th, the Sunday following that. Once you've had a joint practice against a real opponent, do you need more than that to figure out who your number one left tackle is going to be? You will have had 2.5 weeks of practice plus a joint practice. You know, that's a lot of time and a lot of reps. If you don't know by then who you think the best of this group is, then I worry about if you have 3 left tackles, you have none. Then it means none of them have been good enough to emerge above the other two's struggles. Like if all 3 are struggling, then you might have a left tackle problem. And Braxton Jones, at the very least, we have seen him be good enough to not be a left tackle problem. Like as long as he is healthy and ready to go, he should be able to be the starter by the end of that first. Like maybe they want to see them in that joint practice, but like that to me should be like the last step evaluation before that first preseason game to say, all right, we know for sure now who our guys are going to be, so that then the starter can go through the second joint practice and second preseason game and the rest of training camp, the rest of August. They'll still have almost a full month before week 1 to just say, yep, here's our starter and here's our backup. And like, here's the thing right, about this left tackle battle is even after the joint practices against the Dolphins, if you don't even have to announce it, right? I'm not expecting Ben Johnson's going to announce a starter on August 9th or whatever. But even if you kind of decide like, all right, Braxton Jones has quote unquote won this competition, hypothetically here, and Ozzie Trapillo's in second and Cron's in third. If you go another 2 weeks and Ozzie Trapillo makes these big steps forward, like you could still change then and admit, you know what, hey, we thought Braxton was better, but Ozzie has shown this improvement, so we're making the change. Like I'm okay with that. Like I would almost rather you decide, like almost decide too early for the sake of building that cohesion, leaving the door open to change your mind. When in all likelihood, if one player is better over the first 3 weeks of training camp practice, that player is probably going to remain better over the rest of the process. Like it's unlikely that halfway through training camp, a light bulb goes on and a player who was struggling is now somehow instantly way better and becomes this new player halfway through. Like I think they should be able to know sooner than that. And the sooner they can know, the better. Because like when he talks about 6 weeks versus 3 weeks, 6 weeks would put us in September. Like 6 weeks would be like a week before the start of the season. You got to decide sooner than that. And I don't think I think he left the door open for that, but like is planning on it being quicker than that. But I think closer to that 3 weeks is both more realistic and also more imperative that they do make that call. Again, I don't think we're going to get some big formal announcement for a while yet of like who won the battle. But I think the practice reps will make it pretty clear sooner rather than later, and hopefully they can lock stuff in early in training camp, and we can know what this offensive line is going to look like and not have any questions going into the regular season. You can be sure we'll keep close tabs on this left tackle battle all throughout Chicago Bears training camp. So make sure you hit the subscribe button for the Locked On Bears podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen today, be sure to check out any of our other Locked On Podcast Network podcasts across the NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports. We got women's basketball podcast and so much more, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you come back tomorrow. Make Locked On Bears your first listen once again. I want to talk about Caleb Williams and his goals and development throughout Bears training camp. And if you tune back in tomorrow, you can be sure you're going to get another opportunity to bear down.